Dear Excellencies, colleagues, dear friends, I'm thrilled to be back in Tromsø. My first time here was as a teenager, just after Estonia has had restored its independence, and we could finally travel freely. It was during our first trip to Finland that we discovered that you could actually drive up to the north. Nobody is asking any questions. So even cross the border to Norway, a NATO nation, imagine that. So we took that trip, and for me, being in the Soviet prison for so long time, it felt really freedom cubed. So it was really massive. I have to confess that we didn't have visas at the time, and Espen knows this story and has pardoned me already. But I'm also very great to be back here. So legally this time. Of course, it is a period of high stress for the High North. Let me offer 3 observations from the EU perspective. First, the Arctic is critical for transatlantic security. It will require more attention, more resources, and yes, more hard power. Our initial European strategy on the Arctic, way back in 2008, focused on climate, fisheries, and research. Today, we have vibrant, active engagement across a wide range of areas, from promoting inclusive and sustainable development to empowering indigenous peoples, fostering Arctic cooperation, supporting innovation and entrepreneurship, and enhancing civil protection capacities and capabilities. But there is a missing dimension. A year after EU adopted its latest Arctic strategy in 2021, Russia, the largest Arctic nation, launched a full-scale war in Ukraine. That war has increased tensions across Europe, but also in the Arctic. Moscow has reopened and modernized Soviet-era military bases in the High North. One of the world's largest concentrations of nuclear weapons is located on the Kola Peninsula, right across the Norwegian border. The Arctic has also become a testing ground for Russian missiles. Europe must catch up with years of Russian military buildup in the region. And here I want to thank Norway for its crucial contribution to European security in the High North. Next month's cold response exercise with the 25,000 troops training here in Norway will send a clear and unmistakable message of resolve. And this brings me to my second observation. The world has changed. And nowhere is this clearer than here in the Arctic. Not since the golden age of Arctic exploration have routes and resources. I will not repeat these challenges here, with the exception of one we cannot ignore. And this is the radical change in the US thinking that marks a structural shift in transatlantic relations. Here in the High North, you have felt this acutely in the few last weeks. The EU understands that Greenland is strategically important for the United States. It is also strategically important for us in the European Union. Nearby are key submarine lanes. Beneath it are critical raw materials essential for the global economy. And the shortest flight path for ballistic missiles from Russia runs across the High North. This is recognized by all. But let me be clear where the EU is coming from. We recognize that the High North has been populated for thousands of years by the indigenous peoples of these lands, the Sami in Norway, Sweden and Finland, and the Inuit people of Greenland and beyond. We also believe in territorial integrity and internationally agreed borders. And we say clearly, Greenland belongs to its people. Tensions are lower than they were a few weeks ago. when Foreign Minister Vivian and I met in Brussels, together with the Danish Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen. But there is little clarity about what comes next or when the next dispute may arise. So I will reiterate what I said then. The European Union stands with Greenland, we stand with our member state Denmark, and we stand by UN Charter. The future of Greenland is for the Greenlanders and Denmark to decide. Dear friends, all of this, the security challenges, the geopolitical shifts, the rapidly changing global order, leads me to my third observation. It is time for a fresh EU Arctic policy, one that reflects the times we live in and the world we want to see, including a secure Arctic. For the European Union, it is essential to ground these in strong partnerships. In the Arctic, this means close cooperation with Norway, Canada, and Iceland, with whom we already enjoy close ties and have, or will soon have, in the case of Iceland, a security and defense partnership. NATO remains the cornerstone of security in Europe. But let's not forget that NATO and the EU have 23 members in common, and that today European Union is heavily engaged in defense itself. Our 3 member states, who are Arctic countries, bear a special responsibility for driving our Arctic policy. In the same way, those EU member states who are also NATO allies have a critical role in ensuring that the EU security concerns are in line with those outlined by NATO, including in the Arctic. You know as well as I do that the Arctic security is not defined through the military lens alone. It is also about resilient societies, about people building lives in an unpredictable environment, and about sustainable life. A safe, secure, livable, and prosperous Arctic is a global common good. It's up to us to make it happen. And that is what the EU will work for, together with and in support of the Arctic nations. They can count on us, you can count on us. Thank you.
Thank you, High Representative Kallas. As you say, it is time for a fresh EU Arctic policy. What does it look like from Stockholm's point of view? It is my pleasure to invite Christian Danielsson, State Secretary responsible for EU and Nordic affairs, to tell us more.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Governor General, Foreign Ministers, High Representative, Vice President, Excellencies, it's a great pleasure to be here. And as Foreign Minister Barth Eide mentioned, it's immensely timely. We are in a situation where things are shifting. If I would have been standing here in 2019, I would have said the Arctic is the example of peaceful cooperation. Not anymore. High North is not anymore the place where there are low tensions. And that we have to take in. Now, what does it mean? Well, we have already listened to detailed descriptions of the security challenge. It is clearly there. For our part, we see it and we work on it. Within NATO today, and I think exactly as Foreign Minister mentioned, the whole issue of High North has come into play in the security context of Europe today and also in our transatlantic relations to an extent that we didn't have before. That's good, even though it's a sign of the fact that we have adversaries out there, that we have challenges out there. But we need to work on it, and that's why it is important that we now do the necessary investments in our defense, nationally and in cooperation within NATO. We need also to bring in and continue to take into account a challenge that was there 4 years ago, namely climate change, and still will continue to be a challenge for us. Now, that means thinking in terms of how we can mitigate it. That means what we do nationally and globally. That means also how we work together with the communities in the Arctic in taking on the issues that comes about as a result of global change in a negative sense. But this is also an issue which raises opportunities and in a sense plays into the global competition we see, namely the fact that suddenly the Arctic region becomes interesting from an issue from the area of raw materials, from the issue of communication, from the issue of economic development in a broader sense. And we need also to bring in that in our thinking and how we can make that into something which is positive, primarily for the people living in the Arctic, but also in the broader sense for us all, for the global good that the Arctic is in reality. The third element that is playing in, and that comes as a result of this, it's a more concrete international interest in the Arctic, in the Arctic. We have just heard about the US interest, and there should be no doubt about Sweden's stance here. We stand with Greenland. We stand with the people of Greenland. We stand with Denmark, and we are very clear that international order must be respected. That goes for territorial integrity, and it goes also for the other elements that comes about in that context. But that being said, this renewed interest in the Arctic also is something that we need to bring into our thinking. And where does it land for Sweden? Well, for us, it lands on the defense side, bringing in the Arctic element clearly in our defense planning within NATO. In the more general sense, we are working on a new Arctic strategy, where we will focus on the Arctic Council and how that one can play an important role in this new reality. Even though we can't take decisions that we could before, we need to be able to do as much as we can on the research side, on all these important elements where the Arctic Council plays, and we need to bring up the necessary trust with the communities living in the Arctic so that we all can play together in that direction. We are also looking into how the Arctic, in our Arctic strategy, of course on the defense side, and we also look very much into how we also can see it from an economic point of view. We very much welcome the work that is going on in the EU and the role that the EU has, increased role that the EU now is taking when it comes to the High North, the Arctic region. And of course, it's true that with Sweden, Finland and Norway in NATO, the whole issue of Arctic North, of the High North is not anymore something which is exotic, something far away, but it's in the midst of what is NATO cooperation today. But most important is that we can work together. All of us who have a stake in the Arctic, that we work together, try to path out a route ahead to meet these challenges and make the best out of them. And that's where Sweden will be, and that's what we will support. Thank you.
Mr. Danielson, may I invite you to remain on stage with me while I call on our panelists to join me once again on stage. Foreign Minister Barth Eide and Foreign Minister Motzfeldt, High Representative Kallas, and last but not least, we have Professor Åsa Rennermalm joining us as well, Professor of Geography at Rutgers University in the United States. Welcome to you all. Now, we have so much to talk about. We've touched on so many issues, but of course, the overarching theme has been focus on geopolitics. So let me turn to you first, Professor Åsa Rennermalm. And with no offense to our distinguished panelists, our politicians here on the stage, I know that as a scientist, you will give us the facts straight and without any spin. So tell me to what extent what you have heard today fits with your perspective when it comes to the most consequential challenges facing the Arctic region today.
Thank you. And I just want to say that I'm speaking here to many volunteer leadership roles. There's no doubt about it that the geopolitical situation in the Arctic right now is very serious and troublesome. But the long-term security issue in the Arctic is not what's happening right now. the long-term security issue of the Arctic is climate change and environmental degradation and pollution. To understand what's going on, we need science. And we may know on a big picture level what is going on, but there's so much still to uncover because we don't know exactly how climate change is going to unfold. We do not know how it's going to play out in the local communities across the Arctic. And to understand that, we need science. We need to collect data on the ground, make observations, analyze them. We need to run models, and we need to collaborate. So it's a paradox at this time when science is so important that science is being under increasing threats of being diminished in the world. And I'm not just speaking, I'm here, I'm an American person, I work at an American university, and the changes we've seen in the last year with the attacks on science in America is absolutely devastating. But we see similar things happening in Europe too, with funds being diverted to military buildup and production of weapons. So at this time, when we need science, science is also under threat.
So you say science is under threat, and we've been talking a lot today about the importance of security in the region. To what extent is it central to understand the role that science can play in making that link between climate change and security risks? And are scientists as well being marginalized? You say the funds are being cut, the research funds, but scientists themselves, are they being listened to by policymakers?
I mean, we see some very alarming trends that we see in our societies today is eroding trust in expert knowledge and evidence. And it's because of spread of misinformation and disinformation. And in the United States, we see it's really coming to a head where people can't even agree on what is reliable information. What are the truths that we all can agree on? And when we cannot agree on that, that's a huge issue for our security, because how are we going to work together if we cannot agree on the basics? So I see that as a huge problem.
How challenging is it to be a scientist in the US today?
I mean, it's incredibly shocking what's happened in the United States in the last year, with friends losing their jobs, with grants being pulled, with threats of extremely important institutions like the National Center of Atmospheric Research being threatened to be dismantled, one of the most important research institutions in the world that provides models, computing infrastructure, and I don't even know half of what they do. And what's also happening is that we're losing a new generation of scientists because the pathways to become a scientist is becoming more difficult.
All right, Professor, we will obviously follow up on all of this, but let's go to the politicians once again. Foreign Minister Barth Eide. I mean, here we have Professor Rønnemann telling us about the importance of science, but of course from a foreign policy perspective and from a political perspective, you have said today and repeatedly that for you one of the key achievements of the Norwegian chairship of the Arctic Council was keeping it together after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But is the status quo tenable?
No.
Is it in the best interest of the Arctic?
No, status quo is not good. This is a holding operation to keep the apparatus alive as we're waiting for better times, and we work elsewhere to make times better. So status quo is not tenable. That's absolutely true. I would very much like to echo this, that it is also, as a government representative, it's incredibly important to strengthen and actually defend the protection of facts and science. And science basically a methodological way to falsify or verify hypotheses in whatever field. And, you know, the Enlightenment, which is sort of foundation of modern civilization, was about rulers accepting that although I feel that the world is flat, the scientists tell me that it's round. And at the end of the day, it's okay. It's not woke. You know, it's acceptable. All right, I have to rearrange. This is, you know, when we went from Middle Ages to Enlightenment. And if we're going backwards, we're in deep trouble. For all of us, very, very serious trouble. Because if you don't believe, and of course, scientists never agree on everything. You know, this is, I have a research background myself. But, you know, do you agree on certain methods that make certain things more likely and certain things are simply wrong? So I think for the rest of us who are not in science as such, just to accept that there is such a thing, that think there is truth and false, is a foundation for our civilization. And we need to stand up for that, and we need to take the omen for what you see in some countries and make sure it doesn't happen here.
So just briefly speaking about myth and reality, facts and fiction, on a political level, is there a tendency to sometimes accept and tolerate faulty statements? And I have in mind the statements that the US president has made recently with regard to Greenland, saying that it faces a serious threat from Russia and China, and there are warships swarming around the area. To what extent do you agree with this? Is it right or false? And should you speak up when you see that there are certain falsehoods being told?
Well, I mean, this is a very central issue to the conversations we are having. You know, there is definitely a need to take the security of the Arctic more seriously. And thankfully, there's also several arrangements to enable that. It's NATO. It's including cooperation with the EU, but Arctic countries, 7 out of 8 Arctic countries are NATO. The Kingdom of Denmark has a defense agreement with the US from 1951, which allows for much, much more access to Greenland than, within the current framework. So what we have done, and this, I mean, I'm proud to say, practically every single one of the 31 NATO members that are not the US has said, on the one hand, we stand by the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland for Greenlanders, and whatever should happen to the Danish realm, if anything should change, it's up to the Greenlanders and the Danes, nobody else. So we stand up for that, not only because of Denmark, Kingdom of Denmark, but because of the principle that you simply don't take other people's land by force. At the same time, we also say collectively that we're more than willing to discuss the real security challenge in the Arctic and work on them together. So that's this double message, has been very explicit from all of us, and I'm talking about the very best friends of the United States of America.
There have been very explicit statements of solidarity, but beyond the statements, what are you willing to do to stand up to an ally like the United States if it goes from attempts to influence and control Greenland to something more concrete?
Well, I was, you know, I was in Davos. I was listening to the president when he said that he would not use force against the Kingdom of Denmark and Greenland. And a few hours later that he withdrew the threats of tariff punishment for those of us who actually said we're ready to enhance our presence in Greenland because we want to take security issues seriously. So that response has already had an effect. I am very much aware with Vivian Motzfeldt and Lars Løkke Rasmussen, there's still work to do, but we are in a different space. And kudos to them for taking this very wisely into a different space. And we rest assured that we're all with you here.
But is the US still a reliable ally? Yes or no?
So
time is tight.
What politicians don't like yes or no questions. So I mean, the US is a very important ally, and we are just looking in a region where we have a significant and increasing American participation as Americans who are very much aware of the importance of these areas and the importance of alliance. So, and we've been allied with the US for 77 years, and there have been more different presidents through these 77 years.
All right, so the answer is yes. They are still a trusted ally despite all of the uncertainties. But we'll get back to it. Foreign Minister Motzfeldt, if I can come to you very quickly. I mean, you said that the time now was for negotiations and that you were seeking a diplomatic way out of the impasse with the United States. You also mentioned briefly the red lines. Has the threat of the United States to acquire Greenland one way or the other, even though President Trump has said that
this is something that also demands adaptation and finding the creativity that you are so good at, because to find the solution, you only have yourself to solve.
High Representative Kallas, how are you adapting? How is the EU adapting to this new Arctic environment?
Well, we are adapting, but I wanted to address something that the professor said. I absolutely agree that climate change is the biggest risk here and across the world. Actually, if I go around the world and I talk to countries in Indo-Pacific, and they say that there are superpowers who say that we are not coming here to preach you about climate change, then they say you don't actually understand what life we are living, because this is our biggest risk. Now, Europe is dealing with the climate change, and it's increasingly hard because, not the whole powers are there anymore. And I absolutely agree with you that the issue of trusting science is a very important issue, because also democracy is based on trust. If people can't really believe what to, or have to doubt what is right or what is wrong, and there's so much blurring of the picture, then you can't really, you can manipulate very much on the basis of you don't really know what is going on. So this is dangerous for democracy. And actually right now, I mean, Europe is still fighting with the climate change. Yesterday I was in the Norwegian parliament, and then was also one member is like, Europe is weak because you are dealing with all these climate issues, and you're trying to put forward the policies that are making your economy weaker. Yes, but we want our kids to live in this world as well. So that is, yes, maybe a bit a bigger crisis at this moment for us, but at the same time, I mean, there also is a life after us. So I think this is important. And so to answer your question, we are adapting to this. So before we dealt only with the climate change, environment research when it comes to the Arctic, fisheries, of course, not
midday
to
briefing.
forget.
We have a few announcements
but now
for you
we are also
before
dealing with the
we take
security
your
issues,
questions.
because this is a new concern that
Let me
is
start with
rising.
short but very
High
important
Representative
update
Kallas,
to the
good to hear
President's
you talk so much
agenda.
about climate
Looking
change, and I
ahead,
think, Professor, you'll be happy that this
yesterday,
is the one
President
issue
von der
that
Leyen
every
spoke
politician
to
can
President
agree on.
Zelensky
Not every
as the
politician.
regular
Come on.
rapporteur.
All
You may have
if we
seen
leave the United
at the
States
post,
aside.
and
Well,
President von der
we
Leyen
can't
accepted
kind
an
of leave them
invitation
aside.
to
Well, let's
be
bring the
in
US back in, as I
Ukraine
like
to
to
mark
go into
the
the
4
more sort of
years
provocative areas where there might be less agreement. I mean,
of
on
the
stage
beginning
earlier
of
in your speech, you
the
talked
Russia's
about how the Arctic requires
full-scale
more hard
invasion
power.
of Ukraine.
And that was
It will be
recently
renewed
change
and
in
reiterated
US thinking. You didn't mince your word.
sign of the
You stand with
solidarity
Greenland and the rest of
of
it.
the European
But
Union
you did
with
say as well
Ukraine
in Brussels
and
that the
of
EU
our
vows to hold its
determination
ground. I
and
just wonder
unity
how.
in the
Is
face
it not often too
of Russia's
cautious because
continued
of its dependence on the
aggression?
United States for
We
security
are
and defense?
discussing
Mark Rutte
the
said it
details,
very
and we'll
bluntly.
share them with you
Of course, we are
when we have
cautious
more
because there's a
information
lot at
about
stake.
this
I mean,
visit.
there's a full-scale
So
war
this
going on
is it for the update
on
of the President's
European
agenda.
continent. And
Now
there are
let
threats
me
coming from, economic
share with
erosion,
you a reminder
and
of
big
the two
challenges
informal
from
meetings
China that
of
is
the Council
influencing our
happening
economies.
today.
It is influencing our
First, you will
economies,
have
it's
seen
influencing
that an
jobs
informal meeting
and people's
of
salaries, and then
the
it's
EU
creating,
housing ministers is taking
polarization
place
within our societies
this
and more
afternoon
instability.
via
So it's
video
all very
conference.
much interlinked.
The plan
So we have
aims to support member
carefully,
states,
walk
regions,
this,
and
walk
cities
this road
in
and
delivering
try
more
to
affordable,
adapt and work.
sustainable,
We
and
don't want to
quality
conflict with
homes
anybody.
across
We
Europe.
want a peaceful,
And this
peaceful
entails
life,
notably
and prosperity
increasing
for our
housing
peoples.
supply,
But
addressing
it is
short-term
the situation where
rentals
we
in
are,
areas, and the housing stress
if you have
and
such big
supporting the
risks,
most
also
affected.
the ministry
The Commissioner will participate in a press conference
on
that will
building
follow the virtual meeting around 4 p.m.
So we might not need it. if the
Second,
deterrence
there is an
strong enough.
informal
And we want to come back to
competitiveness
this,
council meeting taking
how
place
important it is for Europe to
today
build its own
in
defense capability. But I do
Nicosia,
want to move
Cyprus,
last but not
in the
least to,
internal
Christian
on the internal market and
Danielsen,
industry
and ask you as well
formation.
about how you assess
Commission
this
is
growing
represented at this
geopolitical
meeting by Commissioner
tense,
McGrath.
landscape,
Ministers will
and whether
discuss
or not
the European
Europe
defense
can and should build its
technological
own
industrial
defenses
base
to rely
and
less
take
on the
stock
United
of the
States.
competitiveness
That's
compass
what
1
we
year
do.
after its launch,
That's-
with a
that's
view
part of-
to
Well, I think we
accelerate
have
its
said,
implementation
that the
and
ambition should
effectiveness.
be that we should
They
have
will
a
also
ability to
participate
defend
in a
ourselves
working
by
lunch
2030,
on the
if I remember
consumer
rightly.
agenda
And, if you look on the
2030.
investments being done
Commissioner McGrath
in countries
will
like Estonia or
participate in
Poland,
the press
Sweden,
conference that will conclude the meeting around
nearly all of the member
2:30.
states.
So two
It's-
press
it's
events
moving
this
very much,
afternoon
very
at
fast in that
2:30
direction.
with
So
Commissioner
that's
McGrath
what
and
we are
at
doing.
4 with Commissioner
But if your broader
Jorgensen.
question is about, if we go back to the Arctic,
And
I think what is interesting right now
so we
is,
would ask you to keep any
have
related
this-
questions
we have this,
on these
new
topics
reality
for these
where we
two
have,
dedicated
negotiations.
press conferences.
and Putin now
Maintenant, un
is
petit
Russia.
point en
I mean, if you look
français.
around, Russia is jealous. And you
Veuillez
mentioned
noter
very clearly,
que
Foreign Minister,
nous
and,
avions
mentioned
annoncé
the build-up
hier
of
des
the
discussions
bases
avec
and
vous
capacities that Russia is building,
en
what
background,
is
comme
most
on a
important.
envisagé de faire
On
régulièrement.
that one,
Au lieu
NATO is
de
absolutely
ce
essential. And
midday,
then working with them.
on avait
So what is
annoncé
happening now is that we
pour
are building up
vendredi. En fait,
capacity to
ce sera
plan,
ce
advance
jeudi
planning for the
5
North.
février,
We are
en
having
remplacement de
exercises
notre
here
réunion de
now.
midi.
We are
Et donc,
discussing how to,
vous
further
pouvez
other parts of the High
trouver,
North.
rencontrer,
And we believe firmly that
discuter
that's the way
avec
we should do
toute
it
notre
when it comes
équipe
to defense planning. And then
de
on the
porte-parole et attachés de presse à 11 heures,
it's
donc
not
un peu
about
plus
escalation,
tôt
it's not
que
about escalation,
le
it's about
midday à
building up
11 heures,
to
dans la
authority.
zone
We have to
devant
see that
la
we
salle de
are-
presse
we know that we
avec
would like to
du café
escalate,
et du thé,
So I think it's very, very important. And that is
et
something
on
which
aura la possibilité de
unfortunately is-
répondre
is
en
new for the
background
Arctic,
à
because
vos
you all
questions
liked it when it was a-
et
an
ceci
area of
en présence
of
physique,
peaceful
bien
cooperation.
évidemment.
But it's part of the
Donc,
reality
on
of
ne
the-
va pas transmettre
take a
en
quick
EBS
look at how
une
Arctic
interaction
politics,
et
and
on
these tensions
espère
are affecting
retrouver un
international
maximum
cooperation,
d'entre
scientific
vous en personne
collaboration
à
in
cette
this rapidly
occasion.
changing climate.
Et voilà pour nos
Let's take a
annonces
look
et on
at
peut
research
passer
done by
à
the
vos questions.
Norwegian Polar Institute.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Olena Abramovich, Radio Free Europe. I have a question on Repower EU
Svalbard is one of
regulation,
the areas most
which
severely
is entering
affected
into
by
force
global
today. There
climate
are some member
change,
states
warming 5 to
which
6
express
times
their
faster
complaints
than the
that
global
it
average.
fails to reflect the
Scientists
real
from the
capacities
Norwegian
and
Polar
specific
Institute
circumstances
are heading
of
out in the
individual
field.
countries, that
Over
it
several
violates
weeks
the
of fieldwork,
principle of
they will
energy
measure how much the
solidarity,
glacier has melted over the previous
etc.
year.
Could you please explain if this regulation took into account all the concerns
The Institute
of,
is the main
all the
advisor
countries?
to
Thank you.
Norwegian authorities in polar environmental issues.
Yes.
Yes,
Anna
we,
Kaiser.
yes. This regulation, we made the proposal
The results
last
are
summer,
discouraging.
and it was
Svalbard's
following
largest
an
glacier
intense
lost 1.5
process
meters of
of
snow and
engaging
ice in
with member
2024.
states and
Total
our
ice loss from
stakeholders, as
Svalbard
well as
is
with
expected to more than
European
double
Parliament.
over the course of this
And
century.
after we made the proposal, it has gone through co-legislation procedure as usual.
From South Pacific sea level rise to
You
global
mentioned
permafrost melt,
the few
world
member states
community
who
is
have
dependent
raised
by
their and
knowledge
voiced
from
their
the
concerns
ice-covered
that their
and far
national
reaches of the earth.
specificities have not been taken into account. We have made very clear already
Future
when we
management
proposed
of
the
the
Repower
Arctic
Plan
relies
in
upon international
2022
scientific collaboration,
that we
from
take
collecting,
good note
sharing, and
of the
analyzing
situation
data
in
to
some
working
member
on joint
states
projects
and
and new
how they are
technology.
situated geographically, what their
A
access
single
to certain
mooring
energy
in the Arctic
infrastructure
Ocean
is,
water
whether they're
column
landlocked,
can hold
etc.
invaluable
And we have made
information
very
in
clear
predicting
that
the
we
development of the
continue
future Arctic
intensively
climate
to work
system.
with these member states to make sure
Polar scientists
that
are
all
out
of
in the
them
field
have
searching for
access
answers to the most
to
pressing
a
challenges
diverse
of our
energy
times.
mix as per their
2026
national
will be a major
national
year for
energy
polar
mix
research. In
program
partnership
or
with the Research
policy.
Council of
And
Norway,
we
we
continue
are preparing
to do this, and
Norway's
we have made this very
participation
clear
in the
also
5th International Polar Year. We are also setting up the Svalbard Science
stages. We have
Office in
constantly
Longyearbyen.
been very clear that we will continue to
Collaborative
support our member states.
infrastructure is
For
the
us, the
backbone
most
of polar
important thing is
research,
that
and international
all our member
cooperation
states
is needed
have
to ensure scientists from all over
diversified
can
energy
participate in
portfolio.
this
They have
effort.
access to
As we
energy
head
sources,
towards
and
2050,
there are no
this
security supply
underscores
issues.
the huge
These
need
are our
for knowledge.
priorities.
And
And
updated
of
climate
course,
prognosis
if
in
our
an
member
Arctic
states do
that
have
is
concerns
becoming
that
more
they
open and
wish to
accessible.
legally challenge
International
the legislation
collaboration
that was
is
adopted,
being challenged.
they have the right to do
Science is
that.
more important
This would not be the
than
first
ever.
time in the history of
Together,
the
we
Commission
need to be
that
well
this
equipped
happens,
to
and
find
we will be there
solutions
defending
to the
our position,
challenges we are
while
facing
again at
in
the
the
same
high
time making
Arctic.
sure that none of our member states are facing
International
any security
cooperation,
of
scientific
supply
cooperation is
concerns.
being challenged. An
Thank you.
understatement, perhaps, Professor. Just how frustrated are you and
Тетяна Висоцька, European Pravda Ukraine, follow up on the same topic. Yesterday, Hungary actually put the lawsuit to the European Court of Justice. My question is, was the Commission officially informed about that? Do you have this official information? Which are the next legal steps which Commission is going to take according to this lawsuit of Hungary? And what are your expectations? Because the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary said that this process may take 2 years. And do you have some plan B in case the court will side with Hungary, for example, and block the regulation of the European Union? So what do you have some plan B on this topic? Thank you.
On all these cases that involve the European Court of Justice, the processes are led by them. So it will be for them to now determine what are the next steps, what is the timetable, and how they decide to take things forward. And we are there, of course, defending our proposal, and we do not have any speculation to make. As you said, or as actually your colleague said, the regulation enters into force today. It was published yesterday in the official journal. So this is where we are from our end, and we now also look forward to get instructions and the next steps from the court, and then we will take it from there.
Like what we do as scientists, we go out and we observe the world,
meantime,
right?
we apply
and having
the legislation. It's also important to recall that. Yes, please. And we complete the trio here in front.
Understand what's going on.
Hello, Valeria Pashko, Public Broadcaster of Ukraine. It's kind of follow-up. So yesterday, Donald Trump stated that India would stop buying Russian oil or reduce buying Russian oil, but Indian Prime Minister didn't confirm that. At the same time, the EU continues processing Russian, not Russian, but like refined oil products from India, and which were refined from Russian oil, as we all know. Do you consider to stop buying these products, or is there any discussions?
Thank you for these thoughts, and I'm looking at the clock, and it's really working against us. We've got just over a minute, so I just want to get
here we have had several packages of sanctions against Russia in the context of the war of aggression in Ukraine. And among those packages, we first targeted oil imports from Russia, which were banned. And then later on, we also included imports from refined oil products, so oil products as it's called. So it's been a long time that we have been actually working and tackling imports of Russian fossil fuels, and this also concerns imports of Russian fossil fuels via other countries. So this is for us not new. It's something that we've been actively targeting, and in the overall context, on the one hand, of making Russia pay for the war that it's causing and continuing to cause destruction, and on the other hand, also to be seen in our overall effort to phase out imports of fossil fuels from Russia.
To people as possible.
Yes, Nicolas.
And us living in the Arctic.
Sorry, yeah.
And situation today.
You had a follow-up? Sorry, I didn't see it.
Several
It is, Anna-Kaisa, could you please remind us which member states still buy Russian gas and oil, if you have some data? Because you, the last time you provided us with this data, we had like 8 member states who still buy Russian oil and Russian gas. Thanks.
The day tomorrow
on oil, it's very clear. It's only 2 members because oil is sanctioned. So it's 2 member states that do have an exemption to the sanctions, Hungary and Slovakia. But those countries, those member states that still import, that will diminish dramatically in 6 weeks as well when the regulation kicks in. But
like I said, I think
I'm not sure I have the very latest because, as always is the case, we only have the entry points.
This is what we also
we do not have the information precisely where any of this gas actually goes once it reaches the entry point. So this could be one of the topics that we can discuss on Thursday over a cup of tea.
What is essential is that we find a way of meeting these challenges with the community.
Thank you. Also published today in the official journal is the commitment to propose legislation to tackle the remainder of Russian oil. I was just wondering whether you had a more concrete timeline on that for us, and also in the context of the Repower EU roadmap. I think the original plan was to propose something regarding Russian enriched uranium in 2025. It's 2026.
Well,
what's the timeline look like?
I'm just here as an American.
It is indeed 2026, and congratulations on your new hair.
Born in Sweden,
both oil and nuclear is coming
and
this
spent
year.
my career understanding the Greenland ice sheet.
Good. Other questions to Anna-Kaisa?
You may look at the United States and say it doesn't happen.
I have a few online, but they don't
it
seem
can
to be
happen
for
here. The same
Anna-Kaisa.
forces are operating
Unless
in Europe, and you're an election
Bogdan,
away
is it for
from
Anna-Kaisa?
a similar sort of deterioration of the scientific infrastructure. And the solution, my friends, is to organize.
You're muted,
and
Bogdan.
get ready to speak out. And we're doing that in the United States. We're fighting in the courts, and we're standing up, and we're having alternative. We're expressing
Good.
our
Other
alternative vision for the
questions?
future. Now we just
Yes,
want to
please.
share with you this thing. This is a statement.
Thanks, Jana Hemmersmeyer for AFP News Agency. I have a question for Balázs or for yourself, I'm not sure. The name of Commissioner Maros Šefčovič appears in the Epstein files, but it's not quite clear, so I would like to ask for some clarifications.
We know that there is a better way to communicate with
Brussels in
the
2019,
people of Greenland.
and if so, what
not
was the
through
purpose of
threats
the
and
meeting?
intimidation, but by respect and openness. And Greenland has welcomed us for decades to do science in Greenland.
And
been
on behalf
incredibly welcoming.
of Commissioner
This is the
Šefčovič,
pathway
we
for the
do have
future.
a statement to share with you.
Yes, and before we jump to media, I will provide a short update on the general situation, because of course here
Foreign Minister Barth Eide,
we are talking about a former
What is your
commissioner,
warning? I mean, the
Peter
Arctic
Mandas,
Council
and then we
that you've
discussed
mentioned
yesterday
is
that some new
30 years
documents were made
Can it
available
survive
on
another
this
10 years? What's your
particular
take on it?
Indeed, I think so.
point. And as a matter of general practice, as
most
you
of
know,
the
we have
countries
rules in
in the
place
Arctic Council, most of
emanating
us,
from the treaty and
are
the code of conduct
countries
that
with sort of
commissioners,
high-trust,
including former
high-sense
commissioners, have to
community and
follow.
togetherness,
And
and
then
I
we
think
have an
preserving
indication
that
that
is
some of
maybe
these
as
rules may
important
not
as
have been
investing
respected.
in-
Then, of course, we
investing in
follow up
defense.
and we look
It's
into
also
these
good, to
potential
keep societies
breaches. And
united, and I think what
the
we're
short
doing now
or the small update I can
Greenland and
provide
also
is
in
that
the
we will
Kingdom
be
is very
assessing
impressive.
if,
But my
in
final
light of these
message
newly
is a positive
available
one,
documents,
which is
there
that
might be
remember that the
breaches of the
the
respective
reason we
rules with
discuss
regard to
security
Peter Mandas.
was not
So this is a small
generated in
update
the
I
Arctic.
wanted
It's not
to
because of
offer
Arctic
before we jump
development.
in.
It's because of
Make
global
it very clear
development,
that's
regional
about
development, war in Ukraine, and
Mandas.
Russia's behavior.
Your question
The
was
8
about
states
Commissioner
that are
Šefčovič,
actually in the
and it's a
Arctic,
separate
they
story.
actually have no, let's
Totally
put the
different
caveat
story. And
around
here
the Greenland
I would like
discussion in the
to
US, but if you take
read out
the
a
real
short
issues,
statement
there is
from
no
Commissioner
outstanding dispute. You know, we settle it. We know the border is, we know where
Never had
the
any
states are, we
direct
know
or
where Russia
indirect
starts and
contact,
ends, we know where NATO
communication or
countries
meeting
start
with
and
Jeffrey
end. So these are
Epstein.
countries
I
that
did not
are
authorize,
able to
request, or
collaborate.
agree to
And right
anyone
now it's
mentioning
difficult
my
with Russia,
name
but
to
at
Jeffrey
least the rest
Epstein,
of us should
including
try,
Miroslav
because
Lajčák.
in
Any
contrast to
such
many other
mention was
places, you know,
made
part of the
without my knowledge.
Eastern
If
Europe now,
Miroslav Lajčák has mentioned my name, it was for his own purposes, with which I had nothing to do. I was also never approached with any request for a meeting or contact with Jeffrey Epstein, neither by Miroslav Lajčák nor by anybody else. I'm appalled that my name was used in that exchange without my knowledge or consent, and I categorically reject any implication of my involvement. Quote ends.
There are some problems we do not have in the Arctic, and let's keep it that way.
Your one-word tip for Greenland as it takes the torch forward.
Yes, thanks. I'm coming back to my question yesterday, whether you did you have time to look into, because you mentioned his name, Miroslav Lajčák's case, whether he was in a way compromised in his activity as a special representative for the dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina. Thank you.
On this, Anita, would you have any update on him?
Thank you all very much indeed. Foreign Minister Barth Eide, High Representative Kallas, Foreign Minister Motzfeldt, Professor Orta, and Mr. Christensen. Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. We will meet back here in the afternoon for a panel discussion on the space to collaborate. So please join us again. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Basically, on the regulations that are in place, in particular the staff regulations, I don't have anything further to add other than my colleague Balázs. On Lajčák specifically, as previously also mentioned, he resigned from his duties as the Slovak Prime Minister's National Security Advisor. Also, his services to the EU occurred under the previous mandate, and his term as USR also finished last year and was not prolonged. When it comes to any security risk or threats, these are also for the national authorities to handle because they are in charge of this.
Thank you, Anita. Yes, Stefan?
Yes, my question was whether he was in a way compromised or under foreign influence during his activities as for the EU as a special representative. Thank you.
Thank you. When it comes to the dialogue as such, it remains unaffected by such developments. The dialogue is a steady process since 2011, which is owned by the parties and led by the High Representative, and also the dialogue is constantly scrutinized by the member states.
Okay, other questions? Yes, please.
Thank you, Tatiana Litvinova, Громадське Radio Ukraine. Last night, Ukraine was again under massive Russian attack, and the drone hit a residential building in Kyiv. And this happened just after the Kremlin said Russia would stop attacks at Donald Trump request until February 1st. Instead, it looks like Russia simply preparing this strike that had been before. And from the European Commission's point of view, what does this show about Russians' readiness to take a real step towards peace negotiations?
Yes, Anita.
Thank you. So what we have seen with the latest strikes, but also the strikes also from the weekend where 15 miners were also killed, but also now the Kharkiv city where 9 people have been reported injured, is that Russia pretends to discuss a ceasefire, but it is absolutely not serious about it. What Russia is doing is weaponizing the winter to freeze Ukraine, and since it's losing ground, is resorting to attacking